Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a
tiny king.
The tiny king lived all alone in a big castle. He had an army of big soldiers with long
spears
and stern
faces.
Wherever the tiny king went, the soldiers marched behind.
Left, right, right, left, right.
The tiny king ate alone at a big
table.
A huge feast of delicious
food
was laid out every day. But the tiny king was just one tiny person. He could never finish so much food all by himself.
Wow, the king knows how to eat taiyaki. Wow, how about mochi?
The tiny king had a big white horse, but he was so tiny and the horse was so big that he fell off every time he tried to ride.
Tiny king, where's your seatbelt?
The tiny king had a big bathtub. It even had a water fountain.
Wow, it's so fun.
But splishing and splashing all by himself was never much fun. The tiny king's bed was a big bed, but he slept in it all alone every night. The tiny king was so sad and so lonely that he never slept very well. Then one day, the tiny king fell in love with a big princess and asked her if she would be his queen.
She said yes.
And soon they were happily married. Not long after, the tiny king and the big queen were blessed with children. Lots of children.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
The tiny king was so happy that he sent his army of soldiers home on holiday. They all marched off, left, right, back to their families. Now the tiny king's castle no longer felt so big. The children ran around, laughing and playing all day long. The tiny king and his family gathered round the big table every day. Together, they had no trouble finishing the enormous feast of delicious food. And look! The big white horse pulled the tiny king and the big queen in a carriage while the children rode on his back. Here they are, on their way to a picnic. Now bath time was a real riot. The tiny king and his family splish and splash together every day. And what about the tiny king's big bed, where he had been so sad and so lonely? Well, when everyone snuggled up side by side, it was just the right size. And the tiny king slept soundly at last. Look, here he is, fast asleep. Good night, tiny king.
Good night, tiny king. The tiny king